The bank envelope wasn't heavy, just honest. It sat in the passenger seat like a warning I hadn't opened yet. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other brushing its edge, feeling the plastic window with my thumb like it might blink back at me. I already knew what was inside. I just didn't know how I was going to explain it to myself. Again. When you grow up the son of a man who calls himself old school, you get used to translating. My dad, Hal Branner, was the kind of guy who thought modern problems had common sense solutions, usually ones that involved duct tape, a wrench, or ignoring it until it became someone else's issue. I didn't grow up poor, but we were never far from broke. Dad worked construction jobs that came and went with the weather, and my mom left when I was 9. After that, it was just us. He used to tell people, "It's me and my boy against the world." And for a while, I believed him. I'm 31 now. Got a decent job in HVAC repair, not rich, not scraping by. I pay my rent on time, don't carry credit card debt, and I've been slowly building my credit score back up after some dumb early 20s mistakes. Or at least I thought I had. Until 2 weeks ago, when I tried to refinance my truck and the loan officer gave me a look like I just offered her monopoly money. "Mr. Branner," she said, tapping her screen, "did you know there's a $32,000 personal loan in your name from 2021? You've missed payments for the last 6 months." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it didn't make any damn sense. At first, I thought it was a mistake, identity theft, some scam, but the more she showed me, the worse it got. The loan was real. It had my name, my address at the time, even my old phone number. I told her it had to be a fraud case, and she agreed to flag it for investigation, but she looked skeptical. On the way home, I pulled over into the parking lot of a gas station I used to go to as a kid. Bought a bottle of water I didn't want just so I could stand under the humming fluorescent lights and feel like I was doing something. I called my dad. "Hey, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "We ever take out a loan in my name back in 21? Like for an emergency or something?" There was a long pause. I remember hearing a football game playing low in the background on his end. He coughed. Then he said, "Oh, right, that. Yeah, I meant to tell you." Let me tell you what happens in your body when you hear someone say something like that. First, your face goes hot, not flushed, burning. Then your teeth clench without you telling them to. It's like your jaw is trying to physically hold something in your throat from getting out. And then, worst of all, your brain, your stupid, loyal, used to trusting brain, starts trying to explain it away before you even ask the question. "What do you mean, you meant to tell me?" Ashwa asked. "You took out a loan in my name?" "Well, not exactly," he said. "You said it was fine. Back then. You don't remember?" I hung up the phone before I said something I couldn't unsay. But I didn't delete the call log. That was the first mistake I didn't make. The thing is, I did remember a conversation from late 2021. It was right after his shoulder surgery. He couldn't work, was laid up on painkillers, and the bills were stacking up. I came over one night to drop off groceries, and he was more talkative than usual. Said he was trying to get a short-term loan for medical stuff and back rent. I remember telling him I couldn't co-sign for anything because I was working on my own credit. I remember being clear about it. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something. Maybe a hypothetical conversation where he'd asked if he could use my name just to apply, or see what he qualifies for. The kind of thing you shrug off, trusting someone not to follow through. And I must have said something, maybe even joking, like, "Yeah, good luck with that." Was that it? Was that the permission he was clinging to? I drove over to his place the next day. The front yard was full of junk again. Broken lawnmowers, extension cords that had turned stiff from sun exposure, a rusted wheelbarrow half covered by a tarp. His porch light was on, even though it was broad daylight, and the mailbox was taped shut with electrical tape. Classic. He opened the door like he wasn't expecting me, even though I'd said I was coming. "You look tired, yeah," he said. "You look like you owe me 30 grand, I replied. He laughed, not because it was funny, because that's what he does when he's cornered. We sat at the small kitchen table that still had a cigarette burn on the corner from a 4th of July barbecue 10 years ago. He poured himself a coffee, but didn't offer me one. The silence stretched like duct tape pulled too tight. "Look," he said finally, "it wasn't supposed to be this big a deal. I was going to pay it off once the settlement came through." "What settlement?" He waved his hand. "From the work comp case, the shoulder." "Dad," I said, "that was 2 years ago." He looked away. "Didn't go through. So you defaulted and never told me." He shrugged. "I figured you'd see it eventually, and we'd talk about it." That's the moment I knew he truly, genuinely had forgotten that he already had talked to me about it, or at least that he thought he had. In his mind, he'd done the honorable thing, got hurt, patched it up himself, borrowed what he needed to keep the house running, and didn't burden me with the details. Except it was my name, my credit, my future, and he'd just stapled his mess to it like it was a garage sale flyer. I left after 10 minutes. Didn't yell, didn't break anything, didn't cry in front of him. But my hands were shaking the whole drive home. That night, I pulled my full credit report. There were more surprises. A maxed out store card I'd never opened. A utilities account in my name from an address I'd never lived at. One of his old rentals, I was guessing. I called the fraud hotline, filed a police report, didn't sleep. 2 days later, I got a call back. And what I found out next made everything worse. It was 9:33 on a Thursday when the fraud rep from the bank called me back. I remember the time exactly because I was halfway through patching a leaky duct in a crawl space, and I had to wriggle backward over fiberglass insulation with my phone buzzing in my chest pocket. I answered with dust on my lips and a socket wrench in my hand. "Hi, is this Mr. Brandon Branner?" The formality told me everything. This wasn't a courtesy call. The woman on the other end sounded calm, too calm. Her name was Alyssa. She explained that after reviewing my fraud claim, they had determined the loan did not qualify as identity theft. The application had been completed online, but the device used had logged in through an IP address connected to my father's home. The submitted documents, pay stubs, utility bill, even the driver's license, were all scanned from originals linked to me. "But I didn't submit any of those, I said, heat rising up the back of my neck. "Well," she replied, "we can't confirm who physically submitted them, only that the data was consistent with your identity and submitted through a device associated with a known family address. That makes it very difficult to pursue as external fraud." I asked her if she could send me the documents. She paused. "Are you sure?" "Yeah," I said. "I need to see them." The email came 30 minutes later. I didn't even wait to finish the job. Told the client there was a family emergency, didn't charge for the time, packed my gear, and drove home with my hands trembling the whole way. My dad had used my name, my credit, my documents. I thought that was the full story. But when I opened the PDF, something else hit me. The signature on the loan? It was mine. Or at least, it looked like mine. I stared at that scribble for 15 full minutes, trying to convince myself it was a forgery. But the more I looked, the harder that argument got. It wasn't a copy-paste of my driver's license signature. It was a sloppy, real pen stroke. Not perfect, but similar enough. I tried to remember. Had I signed anything during that conversation with him back in 2021? Maybe a blank form, a notepad, a pile of mail I didn't read? Memory's a slippery thing, especially when you trust someone, especially when that person is your father. I called him again. "Did you sign my name on a loan document?" "Don't be dramatic," he said, with a tone that suggested I was the one making this awkward. I just filled in the form. It's not like I walked into a bank pretending to be you. That's literally what this is, I said. You impersonated me. You said it was okay. I said no. I remember saying no. He went quiet. Then he said, well, maybe you should have been more clear. That line rattled around in my head for days. Maybe you should have been more clear. Like it was my fault. Like it was a misunderstanding between equals. That was the moment I stopped thinking of this as a mistake. Because it wasn't. It was a choice. And he made it more than once. When I drove out to his place again, I didn't bring groceries or small talk. I walked in with a printout of the credit report and the email from the bank. He was in his recliner with a beer on the side table and a YouTube clip of old drag races playing on mute. You didn't have to come all the way out here, he said when I walked in. I didn't answer, just handed him the papers. He looked at them, squinting, then shrugged. I told you I was going to pay it, he said. It's not like I disappeared. You used me, I said. You took my name, my credit, my actual signature, and you buried it under your own mess. I raised you, he snapped. Don't act like I never did anything for you. There's a silence that comes after someone tries to weaponize your childhood. It's not disbelief, it's calculation. You start mentally listing all the things they gave you because they had to, not because they chose to. Shoes you outgrew in 2 months. School forms signed while half drunk. Birthday gifts from gas stations. And you wonder how long they've been tallying it up like some invisible receipt, just waiting to use it. I told him I was filing a police report. He laughed. You gonna throw your own father in jail? No, I said, but I'm going to do what I have to do to fix my life. If you happen to be standing in the way, that's your choice. I left before the conversation could go deeper. I didn't trust myself not to say something that would permanently crack whatever was left between us. That night, I called the police and asked to amend my fraud report to include suspected familial identity misuse. The officer on the line didn't even blink. Don't worry, he said. We get more of these than you'd think. I didn't sleep again that night, but not because of anger, because of grief. Because even though I still had the same dad, the man I thought I'd known had quietly left years ago. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork. I had to freeze my credit, call the 3 main bureaus, and start the painful process of proving that certain accounts weren't mine. Some of them weren't even in collections yet, which made them harder to dispute. I even discovered a car insurance policy in my name, for a car I'd never driven, registered in a county I'd never lived in. I texted him about it. He never replied. One night, about 3 weeks into the fallout, I got a voicemail from him. It was short, slurred. I know you think I did something bad, but I was just trying to keep the house. I'm not a villain, Brandon. I'm your dad. He hung up without saying goodbye. But the worst part wasn't what he did. It's what I found out the next morning. There was one more loan, one I hadn't seen yet, and this time it wasn't in just my name. The envelope was beige, not white like the others. He'd used a different lender this time. Some payday-style operation with a generic name like Civic Financial Solutions, the kind that clings to the edge of legality. No online dashboard, no clear contact info, just a paper trail and a P.O. box in a state I'd never been to. What caught my eye wasn't the balance. It was the cosigner field. His name was there, and mine again, signed in the same wobbly ink stroke I now knew too well. I found it while digging through my dad's mail. I didn't break in. I was at his house because he'd called that morning out of the blue and said, I think you should come by. That was all. No apology, no explanation. Just that one vague request, like he knew something was about to unravel. I went, stupidly hoping he'd tell me he was going to fix it. But he was worse than the last time. Eyes glassy, house darker, TV turned up too loud to be for company. I watched him struggle to stand, and for a second, I felt something like pity again, until I saw the unopened stack of envelopes on the kitchen counter. "Mind if I tidy this up a bit?" I asked, already reaching for them. He didn't answer, just muttered something about people blowing things out of proportion and shuffled off toward the bathroom. That's when I found the new loan. This one was recent, less than 6 months old. And this time, the overdue amount was closer to $10,000. The reason I hadn't seen it on my credit report? The account had only just gone into default. It hadn't been flagged by the bureaus yet, but it would be, very soon. When he came back, I was holding the paper in both hands, elbows locked, like I needed to keep the distance between us measurable. "You did it again," I said. He blinked. "What?" "This one." I tapped the paper. Different lender, but same stunt. His face changed then, something subtle but sharp. Not guilt, not fear. Annoyance, like I was being ungrateful. "I told you I needed help," he said. "I wasn't trying to screw you over. It was just supposed to be a bridge loan." "A bridge to where?" I snapped. "You keep borrowing money like you're going to stumble into a jackpot that makes it all go away." He flinched barely, then leaned on the table with both palms like he was about to launch into some speech. But no speech came, just a quiet, bitter sigh. "I thought you'd understand," he said, voice low. "You're my son." "You don't get to say that like it's a get-out-of-jail card, Tirpal," I replied. "You used me more than once. You forged my signature. You lied, and you're still lying." "Lying? I told you to come here, didn't I?" "To come here, not to confess." He looked away. That was the moment I knew he wouldn't stop. Not on his own, not because it was wrong, only because he'd run out of ways to get away with it. I drove straight from his house to the police station. No hesitation this time. I handed them both loan statements and copies of the original documents. The officer at the desk looked up at me and asked, "Are you pressing charges?" I didn't answer right away. I just thought about the time he drove 4 hours to bail me out when my first car got impounded. The time he built a bunk bed from scrap wood, when we couldn't afford real furniture. The time he skipped dinner so I could eat before a school dance. Then I thought about the $10,000 I now owed for something I never touched. I said, yes. I left the station with a case number and a weight in my stomach that no number could describe. That night, I sat on my porch, knees pulled in, and called my cousin Leo. He'd always been the unofficial family record keeper, half gossip, half therapist, all patience. I told him everything. He didn't say, "I told you so," but he did say something that stuck. "You're not protecting him by letting him keep hurting you," Leo said. "You're just postponing the fallout." Fallout came faster than I expected. A week after filing the report, a detective called me back, said they were preparing to bring charges. The DA was willing to pursue it. Based on the documentation, they believed they could prove intentional identity fraud. I asked what would happen to him. "Could be jail time," she said, "or probation. Depends on the judge." I didn't know what to feel. But then she said something that hit harder than anything else. "You'll probably want to tell him before he finds out from us." I sat on that call for almost 30 seconds before hanging up. Then I stared at my phone and didn't call him. Not right away. Instead, I drove back out to the old place one last time. His front door was open. Not figuratively, literally. The hinges were bowed, like it had been kicked in. Inside, drawers were yanked out, cabinets emptied, cushions on the floor. Someone had broken in, or at least ransacked it. I walked through the living room in a daze, shoes crunching over broken glass from a knocked-over picture frame. And there he was, sitting on the back steps, shirt stained, hands shaking. "What happened?" I asked. He didn't look at me, just said, "Some guys came looking for a payment. From one of the loans, not sure which one anymore. I crouched beside him, not close, but close enough to hear when he whispered, I think I'm done, kid. I think I finally ran out of people to borrow from. I didn't say anything, didn't reach for him, didn't run either. We just sat there, father and son, both out of credit in different ways. But the real debt was still coming due. Because the detective was right. He didn't know yet that I'd turned him in. He found out the following Monday, not from me. From a knock on his door at 8:12 a.m., according to the neighbor across the street, a plain sedan, 2 officers, no lights, no sirens, just the kind of quiet escalation that ruins a man's morning before he's even had a chance to boil water for coffee. I didn't know until later, when he called me from the county jail. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it 3 times before deleting it. Brandon, he said, voice cracked and rough. They're saying you filed this, that you pressed charges. I don't know what to say. Maybe I deserve it. Maybe I do, but I thought we were family. I thought you'd at least tell me. A beat. Then, guess I was wrong. He hung up. And I sat there in my apartment, staring at my shoes like they might give me a reason to go back. But I didn't. Because by then, it wasn't just about money. It was about trust. The kind of trust you don't even know you're using until it's gone. Like a roof. Or breaks. You assume it's there until the whole thing fails in motion. The DA offered him a plea deal. 2 years probation, repayment plan, mandatory financial counseling, no jail time if he complied. I found out from the victim's advocate assigned to the case. She was kind, asked if I wanted to attend the hearing, said I had the right to give a statement. I said no at first. Then I changed my mind. The hearing was set for a Thursday morning. Rainy, cold. The courthouse lobby smelled like wet umbrellas and stress. I wore a button-up shirt I hadn't touched since my last job interview and sat in the back, heart hammering like I'd done something wrong. When they called his name, Harold Branner, he stood slowly, shoulders hunched, eyes dull. He didn't look at me, not once. The judge reviewed the charges. The prosecutor read the summary. The public defender said all the things he was supposed to say. Diminished capacity, financial hardship, no prior offenses. Then it was my turn. I walked up, paper in hand, but I didn't read it. I just looked at him. My dad. The man who taught me to ride a bike, then later used my name to rack up thousands in debt and left me to discover it through a stranger at a loan office. And I said, I don't want revenge. I don't want him locked away. I want him to know that he broke something he doesn't get to borrow anymore. Not my money, not my name, not my trust. I looked at the judge. I'm not pressing for jail time, but I want it on record that I didn't consent. Not then, not now. That was all. After the deal was entered and the session ended, he tried to catch me outside. Brandon, wait! I didn't, not out of cruelty, out of self-preservation. Because I knew if I turned around, I'd hear one more excuse, one more half-truth, one more, I was just trying to, and I was done giving space to that. The next few months were quiet. I changed my number, got a new credit monitoring service, cleaned up what I could from the wreckage. Some accounts couldn't be removed. Technically, I was liable because the signatures matched. The documents were mine. I made payment plans, canceled cards, moved apartments when a collection notice showed up at my door for a couch I'd never owned. And slowly, the dust settled. Until one day in June, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a check. $500, and a handwritten note that just said, I can't fix it, but I can try to start. No name, no apology, just that. I stared at it for an hour. Then I put it in a drawer. Didn't cash it. Didn't tear it up either, because I didn't know what I wanted from him anymore. Closure? Maybe. But some debts don't get cleared. They just stop growing. And maybe, for now, that was enough. But then came the knock. 2 months later. A different kind of knock. Urgent. Loud. From someone who wasn't wearing a uniform. And when I opened the door, I wasn't expecting her. She looked like someone who'd rehearsed this moment in her car. One foot angled toward the stairs, the other rooted. Thin jacket, tired eyes, hair pulled back with one of those rubber bands that snaps when you pull too hard. She was holding a folder. Not a purse, not a clipboard. A battered manila folder with creases like it had been sat on, slept on, or both. "You're Brandon?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "I'm Casey," she said. "I think we need to talk. It's about your dad." My first thought was that he'd died, but it wasn't that. Not yet. She explained it all in short, nervous bursts, like a story she didn't want to hear herself say again. She was 29. She'd lived with my dad off and on the last year and a half. Not as a partner, not quite. More like a stray dog he let hang around, in her words. He'd helped her through a breakup, let her crash when she couldn't afford rent, even lent her a car that barely ran. "And in return?" I asked. She looked down. "I let him use my name. For stuff. For loans. For errands. For things I didn't think would blow back on me." She pulled out the folder. Inside, printouts of credit reports, a letter from a collections agency, a torn-up rent notice from an apartment she never lived in, all in her name. "I think he did to me what he did to you," she said. I didn't know what to say. I'd been the victim, the betrayed son, the wronged party. Now, sitting across from this stranger in my kitchen, I saw it from the outside, the pattern, the need, the manipulation that wore a mask of loyalty. He'd found someone else to prop him up when I stopped being useful. And now she was next in line for the fallout. We didn't talk about forgiveness that day, or about closure. We talked about forms, about lawyers, about credit repair agencies and fraud affidavits, and which lenders were more sympathetic if you used the word coercion instead of fraud. I offered to help her through it, not because I owed her, but because I understood what it meant to be on the other side of someone else's survival. She looked relieved, then embarrassed, then, like maybe this was the first time someone believed her. A week later, she called me from the hospital. He'd fallen, tripped on a broken stair outside a bar, hit his head, minor concussion, nothing life-threatening, but they kept him overnight for observation. He didn't list me as next of kin. She only knew because her number was still listed in his phone under emergency. I didn't visit, but I sent a card. Just 4 words, all I could write without rewriting history. Please get the help. It's been 9 months now. He's out, still in the house somehow. Probation officer checks in twice a month. He missed 1 payment already, but made it up with interest. I hear things through Leo, or through Casey, who still lives in the city but doesn't see him anymore. He hasn't reached out. Not since the letter. Sometimes I think about the man he used to be. Not the dad with debts and lies, but the guy who fixed our dishwasher with a spoon and a coat hanger. The guy who told me to kick the tire, not the problem. The guy who used to hum old blues songs in the garage while changing spark plugs and made me think adulthood was just elbow grease and patience. I don't know where that guy went. Or maybe I do. Maybe he never existed. Not all the way. People ask if I've forgiven him. I don't know. I'm still paying off one of the loans, still arguing with one of the credit bureaus about a default from 3 addresses ago. But I'm not angry the way I was. I've stopped rehearsing speeches in the shower. Stopped imagining courtroom showdowns and emotional confrontations that end in closure and camera fades. Now I just try to live clean. Pay what's mine. Own what's real. That check he sent, the $500, I framed it. Didn't cash it. Didn't burn it. It's just there. In my closet. Between two old toolboxes he gave me after graduation. The ones with missing wrenches and mystery screws and the smell of grease that never quite leaves. A reminder, not of what he took, but of what I get to build without him. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.